Love is a partnership of two unique people who bring out the best in each other and know that even though they are wonderful individuals, they are even better together. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Sugar Mama's Fire Play podcast. I am financial planner Canna Campbell. Today's podcast is every podcast actually a special one, a different one, but this one is even more unique. It's going to be a financial love story. You're going to hear from a couple. We're going to be hearing from one half of the couple, and you'll hear how Autumn and Michael turn their finances around, how they've worked together as a team, how they've gotten each other out of debt, living paycheck to paycheck to live a richer, more meaningful life, one with a lot less financial stress, and a life where they're on their way to building real, organic, authentic wealth and financial freedom for each other. Now, a quick reminder, my podcast, my blog posts, my YouTube videos, and everything you see on Instagram is always general advice only. So please always remember this. We're having open conversations around money, sharing ideas, hacks, and insights. So please make sure it's never personal advice. If you want to know about a certain strategy or product or idea, always go and seek personal product advice from a licensed financial planner. All right, let's get started with this beautiful love story. Autumn, thank you so much for coming on to Sugar Mama's Fire Play podcast. How are you?
Good. And thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be on here today.
I love chatting with people on this podcast. There's so many different stories and so many different insights and words of wisdom and nuggets of gold. So thank you for taking your time out. When I received your message, it was amazing what you and Michael have achieved. But what I loved is you guys are working together as a team. And you guys have taken a very toxic, challenging, confronting financial situation that you were both sitting in together as a couple, and you have dug yourselves out of it. You've gone on to build wealth. I would love for you to tell me your financial love story. Can you start from the very beginning of how you guys met, how you got yourself into this situation? And then I really want to focus on how did you get out of this? Like, what did you do? How did you agree to work together? How do you respect each other's boundaries? And where are you going? I think there's so much important ideas and inspiration in your story.
Definitely. Well, we actually met really young. So it goes back to when I was 16. I was actually quite unwell in high school and I had to leave. So I actually left high school early. I didn't graduate and I lived in a regional area on the mid-north coast. So I moved out of home at 16 to come and live with my grandparents down here in Sydney. And while I was down here, while I grew up in the Shire and I grew up in Sydney, I was living further away from the people I grew up with. So I wanted to make friends and meet people in the area. So I started doing pathways and I was studying with a girl that was local to my area. Her mom managed like a football team. And one afternoon after we finished classes, she took me to their training session and I saw Michael and I actually added him on Facebook. We had no mutual friends or anything. He thought I was a fake profile and we started talking and then eventually caught up. And to be honest with you, I was just looking for people to meet in the area that I could connect with. But he was just this beautiful natured, like a lovely person. And I just thought, I can't let this boy go. So I wasn't really looking for a relationship. I was quite young. But yeah, we just sort of evolved. And it's funny, not long after I met Michael, it was also a really hard transition. I had been through a lot in my life and I'd moved out of home so young. It was only a few months after I had moved. So I was still adapting to that. I was studying. So I did pathways. And a few months after we met, my dad was actually diagnosed with cancer. So this was maybe only like 2 months into us like knowing each other. I was young. I had younger siblings because I'm one of 7 and I'm the middle child. And yeah, so my parents were on the mid-north coast and I was still studying. And as things progressed, my dad was eventually within such a short time was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and by October he had actually passed away. At that time, I wasn't working because I was studying and still recovering, so it was just too much. I couldn't put that on myself. So I would get a living away from home allowance, but it wasn't a lot. And Michael would actually work through his HSC. So he would go to an exam or go to work one day and then the next day go to an exam to help pay for me to go home to see my parents, to visit my dad when he was sick. Yeah. So it was huge. Like early on, really early on, he showed that loyalty, and I'm like forever grateful to him for that. So I think really early on in our relationship, we had to work as a team. Like we went through what you go through in 15 years in like 5 months.
And especially the honeymoon phase, like your father was diagnosed 2 months into a new relationship. You guys are still in the love bubble then, you know.
Absolutely.
You dealt with some very confronting and real and emotionally traumatizing and triggering feelings at a time where it's like bliss, you know, in a relationship. Like it's a lot for you to both deal with and support each other through.
Yeah, definitely. And we were so young as well. So to have to like mature quite quickly and you know, we're still teenagers. So we had to mature really quickly to be able to process it as a couple. And we did. You know, he helped me through my grief, and so he worked through his HSC and helped me pay to go home, and similarly for the funeral, like helped me there. And mind you, we weren't like, he didn't earn an amazing amount of money, but it was just, you know, here's some money for petrol for the drive. And I was driving back and forth like every week whilst also studying. So it was really intense. And then after he passed away, my mum said to us, okay, right, I don't want to be home for Christmas. I don't want to be here on our own. I'm going to go and visit your brother in Europe, because my brother lived in Europe at the time. And so she said, if you want to come, like, you're more than welcome to come. You have 2 months to save. And we were like, I was like to Michael had never been on an airplane. He had never even been on a domestic flight. And my mum said, do you want to come to Europe? And she wasn't going to pay for us. Like, we had to somehow, and I said to Michael, we have to make this happen. And he couldn't see like how it was possible or how we were going to make it happen. And I just said, don't worry about how we're going to make it happen. We're going to do this and we will make it happen. Yeah. And so we collaborated as a team. He would work. So I would cover all of our expenses off my like little living away from home allowance that I got. And he would save his entire pay. And we saved for our flights. We saved, I think it was like $3,000 or $3,500 spending money for a month. Mind you, we came back with money. Like we did it so frugally. Yeah. And we were staying with family and friends, so we didn't have to pay for accommodation.
Okay.
But we worked yeah, definitely. But we worked so collaboratively as a team, and just this thing that we thought was impossible, we made happen. And it's still to this day one of our favorite trips of like our entire relationship. And the fact that we thought it was impossible. Michael's first ever flight was from Sydney to Prague, Czech Republic. So yeah, it was just this game changer for us. And I think that's where it really started to evolve and unravel of us collaborating our finances and working as a team.
Did you guys have a joint bank account? Like, how did you do the logistics of saving for this trip? Like, did you have separate savings accounts or a joint one? Did you both contribute to it?
At that point, no, we didn't have joint bank accounts. We each had like a card for each account if we needed it. We had that trust from really early on. And, you know, we would always communicate like, hey, is it okay if I do this? But yeah, and that was just something that came naturally to us. We didn't both put into savings. So rather than doing that, because he actually earned an income, whereas I would just earn a minimal allowance, like a youth allowance. I just covered any expenses that we had. So that might have been, back then, it might have been like a phone bill, petrol, some lunch, things like that. I think back then I was under my mum's health insurance. So we didn't have like huge expenses, and then his entire pay went into savings.
How did you even agree on the expenses? You know, different people have different value systems when it comes to spending money. Did you ever think, oh, no, that's too much of a monthly phone bill, or that's, you know, too much to be spending on groceries? Like, how did you agree on spending habits? Because that's a big thing I find in couples. Like,
yeah, I think we both come from not a lot, to be honest with you. We had great upbringings, don't get me wrong. And, you know, we didn't go without, but we don't come from wealthy families. We didn't have anything at that point. Like, there was nothing to lose. We were so young. We didn't have big spending habits then. Like, this was the first time we had money. We didn't really have an income before that. So it wasn't like we had developed this habit of online shopping or, you know, have these expensive phone bills. Like, I don't think Michael didn't even have a car then. We had my car and we weren't big spenders. I think I'm definitely more of the saver and Michael's more of the spender in the relationship, but it balances. Yeah. So that's worked really well for us because, you know, I sometimes will wheel him back in and he'll be like, no, Autumn, this is something that we should actually spend money on. And because like we don't do that often, I'll be like, yeah, no problem. I think there's just, I don't know.
It sounds like you both really respect each other and honor each other and honor the well-being of the relationship.
Absolutely. And I think that comes from us meeting young and really developing our finances together, because before that we didn't really have money. Yeah. So I think if we came into it at a later stage in life when we had our own more expenses and spending and things like that, it would be a different story and we would have to really communicate that and go through it in depth. However, at that stage in life, it just sort of meshed together and we were like, okay, this is what you have to pay for. This is what I have to pay for. And I would just do up like a rough budget and we'd make it work.
So as it turns out, though, you guys got yourself into a bit of a mess. And it was actually COVID that kind of brought it all to the surface and you realized, I've got nothing, so nothing to lose, but also I've got debt in my life. Like, things got messy. Can you talk me through the next stage of your relationship?
Yeah. So from there, things sort of just progressed. The years went on and Michael did eventually buy a car. He saved up, bought a car. And then we thought, you've worked really hard. It's time that you deserve. Like, we had this like sense of entitlement. Like, you deserve a really nice brand new car. So for his 21st birthday, I went out and on finance, I took out a car for him.
You bought him a car for his birthday?
Yeah, for his 21st birthday.
Oh my, well, amazing, very generous, but on finance too. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So at that stage, we'd never had debt before. We always just saved up and paid for everything. I don't know what made me make that decision. I think growing up in Sydney, you just see everyone has, you know, big houses, nice cars, and we didn't really grow up knowing anything about finances. You know, my parents had money in the earlier days, but my parents declared bankruptcy when I was young. So I had very distorted views on finances and he grew up with nothing. So we really didn't know how to manage money, what we were supposed to do. And so I took out a car in finance. And then I think within like a month later, I had a $3,000 credit card. And then we used that, we moved states and we used that to sort of buy furniture. We did have savings. So I think at the time we probably had about like 15,000 in savings. So, and then we used the credit card to buy furniture, and this credit card just stuck around for like ever. And then what happened was when we moved, we got engaged, we did like really nice holidays, but we still had all of this debt following us. And then we ended up taking out another credit card to pay for like flights and accommodation and things like that. We were meant to have an international wedding. So we ended up taking out another interest-free credit card to pay for our flights. You know, back then I worked for a company that endorsed these sort of products. They promoted it. So I thought, okay, I'm you know, encouraged and promoted to sell this sort of product, this interest-free credit card.
I'll be a part of it.
Yeah. So I jumped on board and then we ended up with like another $7,000 credit card. Oh. So at this point we had no savings because it all just depleted as part of the move. We, I think the finance was about $40,000 for the vehicle. We had a $7,000 credit card and then a $3,000 credit card.
So you actually put $50,000 in debt on stuff that's depreciating.
And within like 6 months.
Oh my goodness.
It just accumulated. And when we moved, I found it really hard to find a job. So I actually wasn't working for a little while. Michael was working, but yeah, I had time off work, which is also why our savings drained. And then we were just stuck with this debt. And I ended up getting a new job, but it paid nowhere near what I had previously earned. It was a lot of like commission and sales based, which is fine. I earned like enough initially, but then COVID hit and I was in travel. So all of our commission and bonuses and everything just stopped. And so I was earning like $600 a week, but our rent was $390 a week. The car payments were $150 a week. And Michael's work he works in construction. So often jobs will just finish and come to a halt. And then, there might be a bit of a time period before you go on to the next job. So he didn't really have stable income and I earned $600 a week. Like it was not enough to cover the expenses that we had.
How did you guys cope emotionally with the stress of that?
I probably didn't go very well. We were also in different states. So Michael didn't find work in Brisbane. So he was working in Sydney. I was in Brisbane. We had all of this debt. We were just on our own. And it was a huge strain on our relationship, to be completely honest with you. It really took its toll. And I was frustrated with his work. I was frustrated, that we weren't saving and we just had all this debt. And, it was all in my name, which is really unhealthy as well, because Michael didn't have stable income in the past. So, it's hard to take out loans and things like that when you don't have a consistent role. So, it was just we just sort of came to this place where COVID hit and we were like, we have nothing to lose. Like everyone was sort of panicking about like losing everything. And we were like, we have this international wedding that we're like, what do we do? We have all of this debt and we have hardly any income but also nothing to lose, but we still have to pay all of this debt off. Yeah. So we ended up breaking our lease, which eliminated a big portion of our expenses. And I actually came down to Sydney for a weekend to visit Michael, and the Premier shut the borders and I got stuck in Sydney. I could not get home, which was also a little bit of a blessing that we had just sort of decided to break our lease. Yeah. And I basically said it was really nice being back down here with my family and Michael. We had spent 1.5 years in separate states doing long distance. So I just said, I'm not going back. There's nothing there for me. My job is like working in travel through COVID was the most horrendous, exhausting thing. And I just thought, I cannot go back to that. Yeah. It was probably, we had been through it for maybe like 3-4 months. And I just thought, I'm not going to earn like a decent income anytime soon in that industry. There's nothing for me in Brisbane. Michael's here. I just thought, I'm just going to stay here. So I ended up looking for I actually reached out to my employer and said, can I transfer? And they were basically like, no, because of COVID. And so I just knew I have to find a new job. And so I was just looking, and I have a business degree. So I ended up going on and doing pathways and finishing my degree. So I was just looking for jobs, and I ended up finding a really good job in the finance industry, actually, funny enough. And so I applied and I got the job. And so I started maybe about 1 year ago. And when I started, my income doubled like overnight, basically. Wow. And I thought to Michael, we hadn't earned a whole lot in that financial year. So we got a really nice tax return. So we used a lot of that to start paying off our debts. And that was basically when our savings and financial turnaround commenced. The beginning of me getting a new job and our big tax return. Michael had also secured a stable job at that point as well. So he had regular stable income. My income had doubled and I had a regular stable income. And then we had just got this lump sum that sort of boosted us.
So you're starting to turn things around.
Definitely. And I think at that point, with everything that we had been through over the last sort of 6 to 12 months, like it was just a nightmare. And we were even considering taking out a loan for our wedding and things like that. We had cancelled our wedding at this point. We didn't have plans. We didn't know what our plans were to get married. We were just focusing on like getting our life together, basically.
Was there an element of relief in cancelling the wedding because you knew that your debts weren't going to get any bigger now?
100%. It was like this entire weight lifted off our shoulders. It was this huge blessing in disguise that COVID hit and that we didn't have to follow through with this international wedding that we had told everyone that we were having. It was 100% the biggest relief. And in the end, we lost a bit of money from the wedding in deposits and things like that, but we ended up getting refunds from some of our flights, which then paid off some of the credit cards. So we obviously took out the credit card to pay for the flights and think we had like a beautiful honeymoon in South Africa planned that never happened. And so that ended up paying off some of the credit cards as well, but it was 100% the biggest relief.
I think from COVID, there's a lot of blessings in disguise from COVID, as horrible as it has been. And I think, it's been a huge wake-up call to everyone is that we're not invincible. We're not, just because we're earning a great salary right now doesn't mean it's going to happen again tomorrow. Our lives can very quickly and suddenly change. And as you said, you went from earning, great commissions and bonuses to then suddenly like a fraction of what you usually would. We can't bank on the good times always being like that and base financial decisions such as borrowing money always thinking that it's going to be easy and it's only we're going to earn more and progress further. And the other thing is it's been a lot of people have woken up to their debt stories from COVID. They've realized they've been burying their head in the sand pre-COVID, just carrying on this debt. Sometimes it's getting bigger, sometimes it might get smaller for a bit, but then get back to being big again. But it's drawn a line in the sand where they've had to kind of face the music or the noise and actually deal with their debt finally and realize they can't live a life drowning in debt, living paycheck to paycheck. And so it has been for a lot of people a blessing in disguise, a huge wake-up call. And also the thing with COVID is going through all the tough times. And, especially for you guys together, realizing, oh my gosh, we are drowning in debt. We've hit rock bottom. We've lost pretty much one income, most of it, and had to give up, one of our homes, is that nothing is forever. We can make a change. We can turn our lives around and we have the ability to decide what is our rock bottom. We don't have to wait until the debt gets any bigger to hit our rock bottom. We can say, all right, this is crap. Let's not let it get any worse. Let this be our rock bottom, not let it get any bigger or deeper or darker. And I think that's what you guys did. You took control and went, all right, that's it, no more. Like we need to do things differently.
And touching on what you sort of said, it also like turned on this light bulb, like emergency money. We have to be prepared for if anything like this ever happens again. We were not prepared. We had like this ammunition of debt. And that's when we were like, okay, we need an emergency fund. We need to, get rid of all our debts. And gradually that's what we've been doing. So we got rid of all the credit cards. We saved cash for the wedding, which we have now had. So we did eventually get married. Yeah. And then we just completely turned our finances around. I started, researching. That's how I came across Canna, and just really followed other people's financial journeys and basically, did our own research in how to fix our finances, how to change our mindset. I think that was a huge thing. Absolutely. And once we had paid off our debts and, we were saving for our wedding, we saved for a house deposit. It's just like everything has completely changed in a year and a half.
Okay. I want to come back to how it feels in a second being like this, but can you talk me through the logistics of together as a couple, how did you decide, all right, we're going to tackle the debt first, or we're going to build up our emergency savings first, or this is how much we need to have as emergency savings? How did you guys do it? Because there is no manual out there as to how to do relationships and money. It's a landmine, and people have their own money stories. They have their own backgrounds. They have their own fears. They have their own goals. They have their own definitions of money. It is very challenging to bring two people on the same page and then work together as a team, and you guys have nailed it. And it is obviously a testament to, the love and devotion in your relationship, which is so inspiring. But how did you decide and what were the actual practical things that you did to get out of debt, to build the emergency savings, to work out the priority?
At this point, we had joint accounts and all of our expenses we classified as joint.
Mm-hmm.
So we had joint health insurance. All of our expenses were ours. I think that's actually a really big point. It's not like, oh, that's yours. This is my money. That's your money. This is your expense. We do not see finances like that at all.
I have a podcast, which I will link in the podcast description. It's about how Tom and I do money. And we pretty much do the same. Like both our salaries go into the one account. There's none of this, well, I earn more than you so I can spend more, or Absolutely. I earn more than you so I can decide where our money goes. And I can proudly say we have never fought about money. And it's because we're a team. There's none of this is mine, this is yours. And we came together with different financial situations. Like we have different backgrounds, we have different levels of financial education. We have, I have Rocco from my previous marriage. I had different assets and different liabilities. Tom had we have different incomes. Like it's a very, very hard subject to navigate. And it is actually on my next book is going to be on money and relationships. But I think it really does work when you just go, stuff this. What's mine is mine, yours is yours. When you just go, you know what, from this point on, we're to a team and a partnership. It's the only way to work. And I was thinking about it the other day, ironically in the shower, but I was thinking about tribes, our ancestors. The men didn't go out and hunt and say, well, I hunted this meat, I'm only going to eat this meat. They hunted for the family, for the tribe, the community. And the women would go out and gather fruits and berries and take care of the children. And it's how they survived. And it's how we are, reason why we are here today. So it's funny how a lot of relationships where I come across where there's problems in it financially and agreeing is because they have this mentality of, no, this is mine, I've done this, you can't have any of it. That's where things I think start to backfire.
Yeah, I remember reading an article early on in our relationship where they were discussing couples with finances. It's actually quite funny. And I was shocked. Because my parents, they always, shared their finances and I started to see not everyone does that. And, some couples, and I remember reading this article where this woman had to save before having a baby to support herself while she was off on maternity leave. And I was absolutely gobsmacked.
That's very common, very, very common.
Yeah,
and
I don't realize.
It's just your parents, a mother isn't a 70% parent. She's this 50-50. And of course, relationship
and I
down
thought
is different, but it's so wrong. I've recently put on the TikTok bandwagon, which I never thought I would ever do, but I did this video or TikTok video, and it's a 3-minute video about how Tom and I do finances. And this video, it went viral and it's already up to I think almost 500,000 views. And it's amazing. There's the amount of people who commented, they either comment and say, this is what we do in our relationship, and we've been together for 20 years and it's the only way to do it. We love it. It works really well. But then there's this other group of people who are, no way, I would never let my partner do this, or my partner's got a gambling problem. It's funny. It's obviously such this huge disparity, and difference of opinions, but all the good comments are this is the way it works. This is, we're happy, we respect each other, we work as a team, and we've never looked back since having joint finances. So obviously, everyone's got to find their own balance and their own boundaries, and it doesn't have to mean everything's all together. But I think having a good chunk of the family finances together is a very, very healthy way of working together. And also, you don't just suddenly do it, but it's a gradual process where you start with a joint account together, and then as you build trust and respect, and you see what works and what doesn't work, and you agree on the boundaries and the rules, then you might include an investment loan or an investment portfolio. You let it slowly and gradually evolve. It doesn't have to be all of a sudden sharing everything.
Definitely. And I think if you're a partnership, you work as a team in every other aspect of your relationship, what makes your finances different?
So beautifully said. Yeah. So
we, to be honest, I do control and manage majority of the finances. So I sort of overlook everything.
Yeah,
Michael has a sound. Yeah, exactly. So Michael has a sound understanding of our expenses. He knows what comes in, what we have to pay, and we will discuss budgets every week. So I would say, okay, this week I'm going to allocate this amount of money to the credit card. I'm going to allocate this amount to savings. We have this much bills, so that leaves us with this much spending. So then he also knows, okay, I need to buy this. I've got this much money, or this week we don't have as much spending money, that can wait. Or, instead I'm not going to buy lunch out this week. Autumn, can you pack me extra food instead? So yeah, having that discussion about what's coming in and what you have going out each week, I think for us sets the tone, and then we have an understanding, especially because I am the leader with finances. He then knows where we stand and what we have to play with, basically.
Communication. It's so important. Yes. And Tom and I are exactly the same. Like, Tom's like, I've got a tax bill coming up, or, I was like, I think I might be able to give myself a bit of a bonus this month, which I'm going to put this towards the mortgage, or let's put this towards the holiday savings account. Like, communication is so important, and you can't communicate enough. It's just, it keeps you on the straight and narrow, keeps you on the same page, understands when you need to pull your heads in or when you can enjoy something guilt-free. It's so valuable. And so what are the things you did to get out of that debt? Because there are a lot of people listening to these podcasts who are in debt and they're on the debt-free journey, and they're just looking for ideas or inspiration or hacks or habits that really helped, people get out of debt so they can look at applying them in their own lives. What are the things that you guys did? Did you have goals? Did you have a budget template that you shared? Did you have a repayment plan in place? Did you have a side hustle? Like, how did you get out of all of that debt? Because that's a lot of debt you guys had.
Yeah. So some of it, as I said, came from our tax return. Some of it eventually came from refunds. The other part that we did, I think number one, was we cut back our expenses hugely. We just put a stop on spending money, basically. So we moved in with family. We were engaged. We had our own place. I basically stored everything at my mum's. She lives on Anchorage, so everything went into her garage. Yeah. And we had to live with family. So, and that meant moving 6 times in 12 months.
Oh, wow.
So it was not easy, but it meant that we could reduce our expenses significantly. So that was the first thing. The second thing.
I'll just stop you there for a second. So many people are like, oh my God, I'll never do that. It's like, no, sometimes you need to swallow humble pie and go, all right, this is the situation we're in. If we're serious about getting out of it, and we've been given the opportunity by very kind and generous and hospitable family and friends to stay with them for 2 months to save money, suck it up and do it. Like, that's the
consequences of your actions. You have to sacrifice.
Yeah. And a lot of people are just like, no, what, like it's I'm going to sound vicious and aggressive and judgmental, but sometimes people become too entitled, like, oh, I'm not going to like cut down on my lifestyle to get out of debt. Well, then you're going to be in the same situation in a year's time. And I mean, obviously you were very lucky to be in that situation. Yes. But, and it wouldn't have, as you said, it wasn't easy, but it meant you guys were able to get through this quickly.
Yeah. So that was the biggest thing, cutting back our expenses. The second thing that we did is we worked really hard. So I worked night shift. Michael also worked night shift. So that gives you a high income as opposed to working 9 to 5 shifts. And we also did a lot of overtime. So Michael would work night shift, come home and sleep for 3 hours or 4 hours, then go to a day job. He picked up a second job in the day. Then he would come home and sleep for a few hours, and then he would go back to his regular night job. And he did that for months. Like, he wouldn't work every day and night, but usually at least 3 or 4 days of the week and 5 or 6 nights of the week. Like, we worked incredibly hard.
Okay, so for anyone going, oh, this couple's so lucky, they got to live rent free for a year. Number one, they moved 6 times in 12 months, and they worked their absolute backside off, living off 3 to 4 hours of sleep Wow.
That's
Like
my husband, not me. I need my
still
10 hours.
like that is just incredible. Obviously not something I would recommend because lack of sleep deprivation is obviously not great. But you know what? There are times you can do that for bursts in your life if it's worth it.
And it was short term. So we knew that this is temporary. This is to get us out of the mess that we've got into. And, that meant on the weekends, I don't bother Michael. He has his 2 days on the weekend and he recovered. So I wouldn't let him do it every single day. But yeah, for a long time, he, or like a series of months, he did 2 jobs to help us. I remember my mum saying, your dad did the same thing. So I think just it's the man, like he just felt like as a man, I guess, he just had this sense of responsibility to us and to our relationship to help us more. And similarly, I did overtime, not to the same extent, but, I work in a really busy department. So there was a lot of opportunity to pick up overtime. So I would more often work like a 6th day and then also come in to work like 2 hours earlier or things like that. And, that added by the end of the week, you work an extra 2 hours, that adds up. So, yeah.
Look, where are you guys today and how does it feel?
We are in a really good place. It honestly is the most freeing and light feeling, not having any debts and having achieved and accomplished goals that you've had for years and years and years.
Yeah.
So we are waiting for a property to settle that we exchanged on quite a few months ago. It's a new property, so we're just waiting for it to be finished. But in that time that between exchanging and settling for our property, because we still haven't settled yet, we have been building up our savings at a really rapid rate to then be able to put a lump sum on our mortgage.
That makes me so happy. And it's funny that a lot of people, once they've, in that limbo time where you're waiting for a property to settle, is, they'll spend all their money on like the furniture and the fittings and all the little accessories for the home. You're using this time to actually build up as much money as possible so that the moment you move into that place, there's a nice fat lump sum going onto the mortgage. And every time I've bought a place to live in, I've always done that exactly the same thing. That settlement period, I have just been frugal as ever and hustled as much as I can and saved every single dollar so that we were always, a lump sum went onto it, or we were always a month ahead in our mortgage repayment. So the day we moved in, even though the mortgage repayment wasn't due for the following, 30 days, we actually paid our mortgage the day we moved in, which again puts you just ahead of the game. And and then with lump sums, it makes it even bigger and better. So that's incredible.
It's actually funny you touch on that note, because at the moment we're working on our first repayments. We had a strategy in place that we wanted to have at least this is excluding our emergency fund and everything like that. This is just specific to moving into this property. We want at least our first quarter of strata, at least our first month worth of mortgage repayments, and all of our bills involved with moving expenses, things like that, sitting in an account ready to go. Yeah. So that was something that we really wanted to emphasize, felt was important. And so that's there ready for when we do move, that we're prepared. We don't have to worry about it. It's all there and done.
Okay. Look, Autumn, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. For people who are listening right now are thinking, I need to get my partner on board with our finances. What is your advice to them? How do you recommend they approach the subject? How do you recommend they come up with boundaries? How do you recommend that they, have goals together? What is your advice? If you were talking to me right now, telling me how to do finances, or from what you've learned and the way what you've found works and doesn't work, what would be your advice?
Yeah. So I would say you need to be open and honest and have really good communication. You can't hide things or, do shopping on the down low. It doesn't work. You need to be transparent.
Yeah.
You also need to sit down and have that discussion and set aside time where you work through and list or, do a budget, whatever works for you. Doesn't have to be in an Excel spreadsheet. Even if it's, on a piece of paper and you've just got your expenses, what you bring in, and then, agree together where the rest of it's going to go. What are your goals? And set goals together, because then you're both motivated and, then you both know what you're working towards. You've set those goals together. So there's no reason that neither of you aren't working towards it. You made that decision to commit to that.
And look, I completely agree with everything you've just said. I think it's also, on that note of goals, is to inspire it and educate each other. So, if you say to your partner, okay, well, why don't we have a goal to pay off the home loan? And the other person may not be on board or may not understand why it's important to pay off the home loan. But if you explain to your partner, okay, well, if we pay off the home loan, it means that we'll have all this disposable money, which means we can go on more holidays, we can potentially retire earlier, we can, look at moving to a different suburb, or send our children to a different school, or, if you inspire them and educate them to see this is why, these are all the benefits and blessings that will come from achieving this goal, that person then go, oh, hang on, you mean we can go on more holidays, or we can retire earlier? All right, I want to pay off the home loan. Like you can't sort of dictate. You need to explain why and show all the magic and that will benefit not just one person, but together as a couple or as a family, what that benefit's going to flow on to the family unit. And that's how you get people on board. And it's funny, Tom always used to think paying off a mortgage was impossible. It's something you never ever do in a lifetime. And when he first said that to me, he's like, oh, no one ever pays their home loan off, you just pay it. So it's an equivalent of rent, you just pay it. I'm like, no, you don't. People pay off their home loans all the time. It is doable. And I showed him some lump sum repayment calculators and the amount of interest you save and the amount of time. And he is so motivated to pay off our home. Yeah. It's incredible. And he understands that once we've done that, it means there's so much more money to invest. It means retirement is so much earlier. It means we can afford to go on, more luxurious holidays, and that's not really what we want. We want to go to longer holidays. But he always had this mentality, or this, I guess, lack of knowledge about actually, no, you can do it. It is achievable, and every dollar counts. And so it's important to educate and inspire as you set those goals, so that you're actually passionately committed and dedicated to achieving those goals together.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's something that we've done, and we've always set goals together. We have personal goals, but as a couple,
healthy, very healthy.
Yeah, as a couple, we always have goals and we work towards them. And I'll also give, even though I do lead the finances, Michael doesn't really, he checks in, but most of our investment goals and things like that are long term. So it's not something we check sort of every day.
Of course, yeah.
And then I'll just give him an update, and then, that boosts the motivation, and then you sort of commit to that same goal because you see progress, and that's what's really the most motivating, I feel, is when you see that progress.
Well, that's why I always say progress fuels success. When when you see the debt coming down, you see the savings go up, you see another $1,000 being invested, that inspires you to keep going. It's working. It's that aha moment, the wake up call, and it's invigorating and it's intoxicating, and you just want to keep going and keep wanting to feel that feeling over and over again, and bigger and better. So, yeah, look, obviously you guys are on a really exciting path now. The worst is behind you, and it's only going to be more exciting with bigger and better opportunities. And you'll move into your new home and you'll start paying it off, and you've got another investment property lined up, it sounds like. So thank you so much for taking the time to come and share this with you and with us. And I have to say, even listening to you, I'm like, I can't wait to talk about Tom tonight and give him a bit of an update on where we're at financially as well. So
definitely. No, thank you so much for having me. And just quickly, before we do finish off, even another tip that I just wanted to share as well is even if you have your own things that you work on. So I think I mentioned to you previously, I'm more passionate about shares, but Michael's really into cryptocurrency. So, we make that work for us, and do what works for you. But I think it definitely needs to be a joint effort. So if that's one thing you can take away from me, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much, Autumn, for coming on to Sugar Mama's Fire Play podcast. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening, and a massive thank you, Autumn, for sharing with us, such a personal subject matter, relationships and money. It's always a tough one and a very sensitive one. If you could do me a huge, huge favor, I would greatly appreciate it if you could leave me a rating and a review, because this inspires me to keep going. That's my progress where I want to keep going and the success. So if you could do that, I'd be greatly appreciative. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget, everyone, to make sure you're following me at Sugar Mama TV on Instagram so I can provide you with all the swipe up access links to all of my content the moment it goes live. Have a fantastic week, and I will see you on Thursday on YouTube for your latest YouTube video. All right, everyone. Ciao.